Mistake number 3. This is within the area of sound design. Everyone's favorite topic. But for me to explain specifically what it is that editors make the mistake of within sound design, I need to do something and it's going to sound a little bit weird. I want you to take your hand and you're going to fan next to your ear, not touching your ear, not far from your ear, but like as close as you can. And I want you to make a fanning motion. What you should hear is some sort of like whoosh sort of sound. Maybe I can do it to my mic. I don't know if it'll... If that didn't work, I'm going to look really silly. And now imagine a train going past you. So you have these two whooshes. You have this whoosh, where it's just your hand flapping next to your ear. And then you have this huge 1,000-ton train flying past you and making a ton of volume. I want you to imagine that those two volumes switched. Imagine that the hand movement made the same volume as the train going past. And then the train going past had the same volume as your hand flapping by your ear. It would sound so out of context and weird, right? But the problem is so many editors do that when it comes to their sound design. It's where they don't match the magnitude of their sound with the magnitude of the visual. So if we take it within the context of, let's say, whooshes, which is just like those swoosh sounds. If there is a larger movement, so let's say I'm drawing the curves in for me. Let's say there's a larger movement compared to a smaller movement. Which one should have the larger whoosh? It should be this one. So you might have a whoosh that goes like this compared to a whoosh that goes like this. So the bigger the movement, the bigger the whoosh, the smaller the movement, the smaller the whoosh. The reason we do that is because otherwise it just sounds like a train is going past when it's just supposed to be hand flapping next to your ear. And imagine your hand flapping next to your ear making a train wind rushing past sound. Like, you want to make sure that the magnitude of the sound effect matches the magnitude of the movement. So what I'll do, I'll walk you through my entire sound design process, because that way you can actually see how I do it. And a lot of the editors that I coach found this useful, so I think you will too. There's essentially 3 stages that I do my sound design in. The first one is going to be enhancing. The second one is going to be sound effects. And then the third one is going to be music. Now, this is very, very broad, as in like this is a huge chunk of my workflow, this is a huge chunk in my workflow, this is a huge chunk in my workflow. I'm going to quickly break down how I do each one. It will be very in-depth, but I think you'd find it useful because the guys that I coach find it useful. So enhancing audio. This is essentially fixing the raw audio before you add any sound effects and before you add any music. You cannot create the foundation of a building after you've built the whole building. Like, you can't just go back and fix it after. You have to build the foundation before you've started the entire building. In the same way, if you don't fix the main audio in terms of volume, in terms of clarity, before the sound effects and music, you can't fix it after. So when it comes to enhancing audio, there's 3 parts. The first one is going to be volume. The next one is going to be clarity. And then the final is going to be left-right balance. And honestly, sometimes I do these in different orders, like left to right balance I normally do first, volume I do second, and then clarity I do third. Left right balance is just making sure that the audio comes out of both ears equally. You'd be surprised how many editors leave this out. So in Premiere Pro, you have effects like fill left with right, fill right with left. If you see in the 2 audio bars that one is slightly larger than the other, like sometimes you'll get like this, or you'll just get one that's flat and then one that's tall. When you have the audio showing, this means your left right balance is off. You want to fill it so that it almost turns into like a mono one where they both go up together and they go down together. So that's fixing left right balance. You always have to do that first. Then you fix the volume. This just makes sure that, let's say you have like, imagine this is a 15-minute audio clip. You don't want to have like some bits that are super loud and then like quiet and then loud and like quiet. Obviously, it won't really look like this, but when you zoom in, there's some bits that are a lot quieter, some bits that are a lot louder. You want to use a compressor to essentially make sure that they're relatively the same size. You can have slightly louder, slightly quieter, but you can use a compressor to make them slightly, the dynamic, the range from the highest to the lowest goes more middle. So instead of like this difference from high to low, you've got like this difference from high to low, which feels a lot more natural. You don't just jump scare the viewer. So I use a compressor for that, and also just making sure that you're around -14 LUFS which essentially is YouTube's standard for how loud volume should be. By the way, I probably should have explained this. LUFS is, I actually have no idea what it stands for, but it's something to do with loudness. It's very similar to decibels, but it's a more accurate way of how humans perceive sound. If you go into Audio Track Mixer in Premiere Pro, you essentially go to Window, then enable Audio Track Mixer, then add a effect there, and it'll essentially be under Special. And then within Special, there's something called Loudness Meter. That will allow you to see the LUFS of the volume, and you want to make sure the average of the video is minus 14 LUFS or lower, so like minus 15, minus 16. You want to be around there, because otherwise YouTube will either have it way too quiet or it will compress it because you're way too loud. So that's how you know the average volume that you should have. Once you fix the left-right balance and the volume, that's when you're going to fix the clarity. This usually just comes down to denoise or de-reverb. Denoise is sometimes in rooms you have like this hissing sound, like shh, constantly. Some are worse than others. You don't have to get rid of it completely, because when you denoise, what often happens is you start ruining a little bit of the quality. So it's just about having a balance of getting rid of enough noise so it's no longer annoying, but also not getting rid of so much that you start eating into the main audio and it feels tinny and empty voice. So you want to denoise sometimes if it's necessary. To check if you need to denoise, just listen to a silent section. So sometimes what will happen is you'll have an audio track like this and the person will go quiet for a little bit. So this quiet section, technically they're silent, but there's still like a background noise. That's what noise is. So denoise basically tries to get rid of this, but what will happen is oftentimes it gets rid of a little bit of these parts, so it sounds a little weird. So denoise, you can add that. De-reverb is where you have like an echoey room. Full transparency, this room's a little bit echoey. Hopefully it's not too bad, but de-reverb, especially if it's really bad, you can add it on there. So that's how I fix clarity. I usually do that last, because sometimes if the volume's too loud, then the noise and reverb will be more pronounced. If the volume's fixed, it might be that you don't need to fix these at all, or vice versa. So that's enhancing audio. Now sound effects, I will break it down into, first of all, whooshes. Every single movement that I do will have a whoosh or swoosh, making sure that I match the intensity, the length, and the volume of the whoosh to the magnitude of the movement. Once I've done the whooshes, I will then focus on functional sound effects. So this is with context as to what's happening on the screen, what sound effects make sense here. So let's say I'm editing a scene and it's a guy on fire, and I actually added the overlays, all that stuff. The whoosh might be when the fire comes up, I have a whoosh happen. But as the fire is happening, a functional sound effect that I might have is fire crackling. Once I've done the functional sounds, so let's say another example would be, let's say I do an animation, the guy's talking about he spent the last 3 hours doing something. I bring up a clock, and because there's a clock, I put a clock ticking sound effect. These are functional sounds. Anytime there's context behind the animation, which there almost always is, you add a sound effect. Sometimes it's not as obvious. For example, let's say he's talking about time, you're doing a flash forward, but you're not showing a clock or anything, you're just showing like a flash forward. You might still add like a clock sound effect, or like a, you know, those cassette DVD player, old DVD players where you can hear like the tape whirring. You might add one of those. So these are functional sound effects. And then third of all, for sound effects, I will be adding unique sound effects. These are sounds that maybe don't entirely make sense on paper, but they somehow work. The best example I have of this is once I made an editing pack trailer, and basically the word swiped on. Like it was just like a purple text background, and there's like white text that swipes on. I added an eagle sound effect, like an eagle sound. I don't know why I tried it, but I was just like, this movement seems super cool. Like I want a cool sound. So I tried a few random sounds on Epidemic Sounds, and then I tried an eagle sound and it worked. And I was like, I don't know why it works, but it works. Another example is I saw this in another editor's video that I coach. Pretty much it was like two consoles, they were versing each other. Like it was like a versing, so it's like comparing Xbox and PS5. And they added a boxing bell sound effect. Technically, there's no boxing happening. They're not in a ring, but it's like it works kind of in this context. So those are unique sound effects. Whooshes are the main ones. Whooshes will be in every single movement. Functional sound effects where it makes sense, and then unique, I'll just try it, see if it works, because it adds a bit of flair. Now with music, when it comes to choosing the right music, the largest thing you're going to want to think about is what emotion am I trying to portray? So as you're cutting the video, you should have this idea of what story am I telling? So maybe at one point the guy was running away from a killer, but then he found a safe spot, and then another killer decided to help that killer, and now they're both on him. Oh no, then his friend comes to save him. Like, you see, there's all these like highs and lows and highs and lows. Every single time there is an emotive change, you change the music. So that's where every time the emotion or the storyline like slightly takes a pivot, that's when I'm going to be changing the music, and that's usually every 10 to 40, 50, 60-ish seconds. And this is essentially how I do my sound effects. I'm enhancing the audio, doing the sound effects, and then doing the music in that order, because you physically cannot add good sound effects or good music if you haven't fixed the main audio, because you don't have context as to how loud the main audio is going to be. If you're a freelance video editor and you want to get more clients, I've got something for you. It's a completely free outreach tracker. It's the same one we use with all our coaching students, and it's going to allow you to be able to send more messages to potential clients, get more replies, and also be able to close them at higher rates. So go get that free tracker in the description. After you signed up for it, I'm going to send it straight to your email. I'm going to give you a bit more information on how I personally help video editors. So if you do want to get more help, you can apply there. But whether you get my further help or not, just go and get the free tracker for now, because at least you're going to be able to run this on your own for a while.